For decades, there was a clear sequence you were supposed to follow to build a secure life. Go to school, get your degree, shake the dean's hand, and step into a stable career. That was the American promise, handed down to every modern generation. It wasn't always an easy path. The greatest generation and the baby boomers were drafted en masse into global conflicts and lived through the devastating 1918 Spanish flu. Yet, despite those massive traumas, the financial data shows they consistently went on to build more wealth than their parents did. This chart compares baseline stress and depression rates across age groups. Gen Z, born between 1997 and 2012, forms a massive statistical anomaly, reporting the highest levels of burnout today. Look at this gap between the boomer and Gen Z response rates. That disconnect in generational reality frequently leads older adults to misinterpret these numbers, writing off struggling 20-somethings as lacking focus or basic work ethic. The economic systems that guaranteed stability for the last 50 years are failing under their feet. Gen Z is facing a reality where the traditional path to success has simply been pulled out from under them. The reliable corporate ladder is gone. In its place is a greased ravine, leaving this generation to navigate the economic and social fallout of the last 2 decades. The traditional advice from parents and high school counselors is straightforward. Take out loans to get an advanced degree, and you'll secure a stable, well-paying career. The math on that advice no longer works. The cost of college has grown exponentially over the last few decades, saddling young adults with high-interest student debt. Because these specific loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy, millions are trapped financially before they even receive their first paycheck. This debt burden has sparked political warfare. Younger voters are actively protesting and demanding government intervention to forgive these loans, while current administrations have increasingly pressured them to pay up. And when those graduates try to enter the workforce to pay off that debt, they hit a wall. Older workers can't afford to retire, which bottlenecks upper-level jobs. At the entry level, applicants find themselves sending out hundreds of resumes, only to be silently filtered out by AI algorithms, without a human being ever reading their name. With doors closing in traditional offices, the default fallback is the gig economy. Working for platforms like Uber or DoorDash offers income, but it's volatile and high stress. Workers constantly hustle for limited jobs, knowing the algorithm can deactivate their livelihood in an instant based on a single bad customer rating. When inescapable debt meets a job market guarded by algorithms and defined by volatile gig work, the concept of working your way up the corporate ladder ceases to exist. If the career path is broken, the next step of the playbook, launching into independent adulthood, becomes nearly impossible. For decades, that meant renting your first apartment or buying a modest starter home, but post-COVID inflation has sent rent prices skyrocketing. To even get the keys to an apartment today, landlords frequently demand extensive background checks, high credit scores, and multiple months' rent up front. If you are surviving on gig work, coming up with that capital is mathematically improbable. This creates a widespread failure to launch. Only about 26% of Gen Z currently owns a home. The rest are forced into uncomfortable, crowded roommate situations, or simply have to move back into their childhood bedrooms to survive. While they are increasingly isolated at home, their outside world is shrinking too. Decades ago, teenagers socialized at local malls or diners. Today, strict town curfews and the widespread closure of retail centers have eradicated these vital third spaces, the physical locations outside of home and school where young people used to develop independence. Without physical places to gather, Gen Z replaced their lost milestones with digital ecosystems. Social media platforms are driven by algorithms that keep users engaged with negative content, leading to a cycle of chronic doom scrolling that actively degrades their attention spans and mental health. Deprived of affordable housing and physical community spaces, the transition to independent adulthood has been replaced by isolated digital stagnation, and the hurdles keep coming. The rapid evolution of artificial intelligence threatens to automate away the exact entry-level cognitive work like professional writing, digital graphic design, and basic data analysis that Gen Z is currently training to do. This looming automation of the workforce makes it difficult to plan for a 5-year career path, let alone a 50-year one. Layered on top of economic uncertainty is intense climate anxiety. Polls showed this demographic is uniquely worried about the long-term habitability of the planet, and that specific dread actively dictates where they choose to live and what kind of long-term goals they set. Because they are the first true digital natives, they process these global threats in real time. Instead of catching the evening news once a day, their social feeds continuously stream unedited footage from conflict zones directly to their phones, heavily battering their psychological well-being. They are also watching social progress retreat. With over a quarter of Gen Z identifying on the LGBTQ+ spectrum, witnessing recent political campaigns push to roll back transgender and queer rights leaves many feeling that society's most tolerant days are already behind them. The compounding dread of AI replacement, climate collapse, and human rights regression erodes the fundamental American assumption that the future will inevitably be better than the present. Look at this graph tracking generational wealth accumulation. The macroeconomic consequence of these combined crises is stark. Gen Z is currently on track to be the first modern generation definitively poorer than their parents. Because the traditional playbook has failed to provide the security it promised, this generation is actively abandoning business-as-usual politics. They are emerging as political iconoclasts. Figures like Congressman Maxwell Frost represent Gen Z's direct entry into federal legislative power. They refuse to be boxed into traditional party lines, choosing instead to directly challenge the status quo on both sides of the aisle. To survive in an economy that prices them out of basic necessities, young voters are demanding aggressive, systemic overhauls. They are campaigning for universal basic income, immediate climate intervention, and strict legislation to regulate artificial intelligence in the workplace. This generation's rejection of the standard playbook isn't an act of surrender, it's a pivot toward survival. As they enter the halls of power, they are dismantling the broken protocols of the past to establish rules that actually function in the 21st century.